We're going to get started. I kind of need to watch the time. Uh, we had a incident outside our room last night at the hotel. They had a murder, and they had a big fight. We had to call security and everything, but the local news is coming out to interview us in a little while. So, anyway, how about that for an opener? The reality is, people tell me, aren't you afraid to go to Israel? And I tell them, absolutely. I have to go through New York. Okay? Or D.C., or wherever, okay? But the reality is that if you in Israel, if you stay out of the Palestinian areas, you are actually much safer than you are in our country. That's sad. It's not Albuquerque. It's everywhere, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. But this is what's prophesied, that things are going to deteriorate, and we look forward to the day Messiah comes, and we have where there's real security and there's real peace. So we're going to talk about establishing the location of the temple. Now this, I mentioned this before. I have a course on the temple. The course, we call it Temple Academy. You can take it through our Jerusalem Temple Study. If you're a gold member, then it comes with it. The course, if you take it and you're not a member, is $300. If you take it with the course, a whole year of Jerusalem Temple Study is $300, and you can download all of our materials and get our weekly Havaran, everything. Yeah, it's $25 a month, so it comes to that. But anyway, there's two ways to study the temple. One is you can study about the temple, or you can study the temple. Now, studying the temple to me is this. It's where that you start off at the very beginning and you learn a lesson. The lesson means that I'm going to do a 2-hour video, and then I'm going to supply you with materials to read, and these materials are going to be from a variety of different types of material. For instance, there will be, you have your scriptures. I don't supply you with the scriptures, but you're going to have things to read from that. I'll give you commentary, for instance, from Rashi, from Rambam. You'll read from Mishneh Torah. You'll read from the Mishnah. You'll read from Josephus, and then I give you a test. The test is not multiple choice. It's where that you write in the answers, but generally the answers are like a sentence or two sentences. Sometimes people put out answers this long, but I personally go through and grade them, and I'm not grading on the basis of you get everything 100% right. What I'm looking for is, are you catching what the spirit of it? Are you catching what is behind there? We can work out all the details later, but you have to be able to understand what the temple's about. At times, like for instance, the fifth lesson is called What is Kedusha? This is the fourth lesson, which is establishing the location of the temple. The first lesson is the command to build. The second is the history of the Beit HaMikdash and the Mishkan. The third is the geography of Jerusalem. And then the fourth is this one. Fifth is what we call Kedusha, or sanctification, holiness. And that is a key to the temple. There is a tremendous work on the temple. It's a book that was put out by a well-known rabbi that is called the Temple. It's meeting for today, tomorrow, for yesterday, today, and tomorrow, I believe. In his first article is called What is Kedusha? And I thought I understood Kedusha until I read his article. And it's like I realized I don't even know what I'm talking about. And this is one of the most frequently spoken of topics within the faith is holiness. What is holy? And so forth. And so I included his chapter on that. Give you an example. So anyway, we have 13 lessons in the first course. Then there's a second course. Then there's a third course. Fourth course. There are 8 courses. It's structured just like going to college. Your first lesson is going to be the foundation for the second. You can't take the second until you pass the first, and so forth. You do it at your own speed. You get all the slides. You're able to see it. But if you are interested in studying the temple, I would highly encourage it, because it's structured so that you will learn the information and avoid some of the pitfalls that are so easy to have. There we go. On the Temple Mount, we have 3 theories of where the temple was located. What we call the northern theory, what we call the central theory, and what we call the southern theory. Okay, so the northern theory was put forth by a man named Asher Kaufman. Asher Kaufman was not an archaeologist, but he was a well-known businessman in Israel. And actually, his theory I used to teach, and it doesn't hold water. There's a flaw in it, a major flaw. So here, this is Asher Kaufman. This is one of his drawings, and we want to point out several different features here. We have, this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque down at the southern side of the Temple Mount. One of your passageways into the temple is right here, coming up through the underneath the building, and then there is another one further over at this point. This is what is called the Muslim platform, and that's where the Dome of the Rock sits, right here. This is the Golden Gate, which you see from the eastern wall, that's all walled up. That is not a temple era gate. That is for the Byzantine period. Byzantine period is going to be like after 300, Common Era 400, that time period. His temple is located at the northern end of the Muslim platform. Now here, it's changed different, but this came out in bar. And one thing that I want you to notice, let's go back and look again. You see his side buildings. Wait, you see his side buildings here. Side buildings are absolutely essential, because that's what allows for your temple to operate. This is where you're going to cook all those sacrifices. You can't cook them on the altar. You can't have any fires out in that main area. If it's a most holy sacrifice, which are going to be your sin offerings, your burnt offerings, and your trespass offerings, the Korban Hasham, the Korban Hatat, and the Korban Olah. Of course, the Olah, the burnt offering, is going to be totally consumed on the altar. But the Hasham and the Hatat, the sin offering, and the trespass offering are required to be eaten. Now, when I say they have a Kedusha, anytime you have Kedusha, you're going to have restrictions on who can do this, when it's to be done, how it's to be performed, etc. Okay? An example of the Shabbat is holy. In Isaiah 58, it tells us that not speaking of your own ways, not doing your own things, that you call the holy day of the Lord honorable. There's restrictions. We don't buy on the Shabbat because of its Kedusha. And so his buildings here are very, very small, as well as his gates are very small, and they do not fit the descriptions that we have both from the Tanakh as well as from the Mishnah and Josephus, as well as what is called the Temple Scroll. Now, let me just very quickly talk to you about the Temple Scroll. Temple Scroll was one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Two men One was Professor Susnik, and his son, who had a different name. He took a Hebrew name. His name was Igal Yadin. How many of you have been to Masada? Yadin was the excavator of Masada. How about Megiddo? Yadin was excavator there. Hatzor, Gezer. He was one of Israel's greatest archaeologists, and he and his father were the ones that got the Dead Sea Scrolls. So there's quite a story. You should read it, okay, about how they got the Dead Sea Scrolls. It has a little bit of intrigue and all types of things because the Muslims would not have sold to Israel. And so, anyway, they knew there was one more scroll out there. They'd seen a little piece of it, and they knew it was about the temple. So through Yadin was second in command of the Israeli army. And by the way, an interesting book you might want to read is called The Art of Biblical Warfare. It's in 2 volumes. It's both in English and Hebrew. It's a classic. But it is going to take from the very earliest periods all the way up through the biblical period and show fortifications, warfare, strategy, tactics, all types of information. Now, if you're interested in the modern Israeli army, it was structured by Yadin, and he structured it according to the army plan of King David. And so, at any rate, Yadin, he knew through Israeli intelligence where the scroll was. It was in Bethlehem, and of all places to be, the man was a sandal maker. And you don't want leather scrolls in the hand of a sandal maker, because if they can't get enough money for it, they'll cut it up. They'll also, and they didn't want this, for them to try to sell it to them piecemeal. And so when the Israeli army entered into Bethlehem, Yadin grabbed a private in a jeep, and he goes ahead of the army. He's driving in. There's people fighting all over the place. Goes straight to the house of the sandal maker, goes in, and the scroll is in a box under the bed. Gets the scroll, and Yadin himself translated the temple scroll. And there is a 4-volume work. You can buy it. There's a 1-volume work you can buy, and it's very good. By Yadin, and it's very economical. The big scholarly version is $300 for the Israel Exploration Society. But a lot of the questions we had on the temple, we saw in the temple scroll, it would go into descriptions. Frequently, this would lead us to passages that we were not seeing. Let me tell you this. When I was a kid, when we went to the grocery store, the kids all scattered went wherever, okay? There were 2 places you go, to the toy aisle and the cereal aisle. Now, you didn't buy cereal based on how good it tasted. You bought cereal based on the toy that came inside the cereal. Okay? A lot of y'all remember, you did it too, right? So my sister, she loved to get the ones that had the puzzle in the back, and it had a drawing. It would be a jungle scene. It says, how many birds can you see in this picture? I look at it, and I wouldn't find a bird at all. She would look at it, and oh, here's a bird, and there's a bird. Once she showed me how to see them, I could spot them all over. Same thing with the temple scroll. There was information in the Tanakh, but we were missing it because we didn't know how to look for it. Okay? So you have to understand, God is bringing out all of this information at this time to put the pieces together. Okay? So we have, we're going to go forward here, and you can see right here, here's his temple building, and look how his inner courtyard, this is the Azarah, and how that it has a slant. The reason it has a slant is where he placed the temple, there's only room for it to do that. Okay? Yeah. We're going to look. Here we see it turned. See it's a direct line with the eastern gate. Now that's that Byzantine gate. Now, I will tell you that there is a temple period gate below it. And that gate, we believe, is on top of another gate. We actually have pictures of the gate below it. A man named James Fleming, who was an archaeological student, was up in the Muslim cemetery. He was poking around, looking. I go up there a lot, poking around, looking. And he fell through a grave. And he fell down into a chamber full of bones. And he jumps up, and he has his camera with him, and there is the top stones of a lintel of a gate underneath the gate above. And so he takes photographs of it. They go back to get archaeologists to come forward and excavate it, to see it. The Muslims have already come in with cemented it up, and it was too sensitive a political issue for them to go in and do this. Okay, so we know that there's a gate here. However, in the Mishnah, it tells us, and we have the tractate Midot, which was written. Midot means measurements. And Midot was written by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who was a Cohen. He was a priest, and he served in the temple. And so his information is especially valuable. He writes that they're about the gates around Har Habayit. Okay, Har Habayit is the Temple Mount. Now, the Temple Mount, this is going to get kind of confusing. The Temple Mount, technically, from a biblical standpoint, from an Orthodox standpoint, is only the area commanded by God. It does not include the area extended by the Hasmoneans nor Herod. That we call part of the Temple Mount. But it's kind of like talking about Houston and Greater Houston. Understand, only the part in the 500 cubits by 500 cubits is the area that has the Kedusha. Okay? So that, I know that can kind of be starting to get a little bit deep, but just bear it on the back, keep it on the back burner. So anyway, Kaufman's theory was that the Holy of Holies was a direct line with this gate. Now, in the Mishnah, it's going to say about the 500 cubits by 500 cubits that there are two gates on the south called the Huldah gates. There is one gate on the west called the Kaponis gate. There's one gate on the north called the Tani gate. And there's one gate on the east called, it's a long name. I'll do it for you in Hebrew first. The Sha'ar Mizrach Shushan Habirah. Okay, which means the eastern gate, that's the Sha'ar Mizrach, Shushan. You know, the Persians gave permission for them to come back and build the temple. And so their capital was called Susa, which in Hebrew is Shushan. Habirah, Susa the palace. To honor the Persian kings that allowed them to come back, they named the eastern gate after that. Now we could say, oh, well, there's only one gate on the east. However, when we read the book of Nehemiah, chapter 3 and chapter 12, we see listed there 3 gates on the east. And so we have what's called the most southern of those gates is going to be called the Sha'ar Susim, which means the horse gate. That is the gate to the palace of the Judean kings. You remember Athaliah, the bad queen mother that killed all the king's sons when he got killed, that King Joash was hidden in the temple for 7 years, and they bring him out, and they crown him, and they take her. Where did they kill her? In the horse gate. Okay? But that's the gate to the Temple Mount. Then we have the eastern gate. In Nehemiah, it's just called the Sha'ar Mizrach, the eastern gate. Then we have another gate that's called the Sha'ar Mifkod, which means the inspection gate. And that is what this is over. That's where the inspection gate. We're not sure why it's called inspection, but we have that the sheep, even up until the 1980s, the sheep market in Jerusalem was right up here, just outside the Lion's Gate. And then you had the sheep pools, which are just inside the gate, that date to the temple period. And we believe that they brought the sheep here, they washed them, prepared them for the temple, and this is, we think, we're not sure, but we think they brought them in through the inspection gate to again inspect, make sure there's no blemishes, and so forth. So here, this is going to be the door. We now know that there was 4 gates on the east, because in the Herodian extension, which is going to be after the time of Herod, we can see a 4th gate. It's still visible. We can see where it's been walled up, and we have what's called the spring stone. It's the stone that they built a stairway up to it, and the stairway is going to come across, and it hits the spring stone. You have the same thing on the other side with Robinson's Arch. Okay, so here you can see exactly where his temple is located, and this is where the middle theory is, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But notice how close it is to the northern edge of the Muslim platform. We have a problem. It's called the fosse. And what is a fosse? A fosse is a dry moat. It's a big ditch. And so this is going to be from Josephus. Let me give you the reference here. It's going to be from Jewish Antiquities, Book 14, paragraphs 60 and 61. So his first step was to offer conciliatory terms to those within, but as they would not listen to his proposals, he fortified the surrounding places with walls. And what's being discussed here is there's a civil war between Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. Now remember, Hyrcanus was the kind of weak, very, very weak son of King Alexander Eunae and Alexandra, and she hired Antipater, the strong-arm man, to protect him. The brother Aristobulus is going to be fighting. He goes to civil war against him. Now I'm going to tell you how bad Aristobulus was. Eventually, see, Hyrcanus is the high priest, because that's what the Hasmoneans did. They were the prince and the ruler. I mean, the prince or the king and the high priest. So he has a meeting with his brother. His brother embraces him like he's going to kiss him on this cheek and that cheek, okay? And I have, when Rabbi Richmond and I meet, he'll usually give me a kiss on both sides. Some of the other rabbis will. And so anyway, nothing to be concerned about. This is the custom. But Aristobulus immediately bites his ear off because he can't serve as high priest. He now has a blemish. All right? How would you like to have him for a brother? So now Aristobulus has fortified himself inside the inner courtyard of the temple, because the temple is also called a birah. A birah means both palace and fortress. And it's called that 2 places in the Mishnah. One is going to be the tractate Parah, or the red heifer, and also in the tractate Tamid, on the priest. We'll see this a little bit later. On the priest, how they go to the toilet, okay? And so it says, his first step was to offer conciliatory terms to those within. This is going to be to those within the inner courtyard. But as they would not listen to his proposals, he fortified the surrounding places with walls, with Hyrcanus willingly assisting him in all ways. And it dawned. Now the Jews called the Romans to help them. So they've sent Pompey. Now, you know who Pompey was? At one point, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Cassius are going to rule Rome. And so Pompey is one of the greatest generals, and he comes, and Pompey pitched his camp on the north side of the temple where it was open to attack. Now remember, that's the side they fortify because it's higher ground, and an enemy has that access to them. But even here stood great towers and a trench. Here's your fosse. Had been dug, and the temple was surrounded by a deep ravine, for there was a steep slope to the side toward the city. That's going to be called the Trumpeting Valley. Toward the city after the bridge was destroyed. At this spot, Pompey, by great labor, day by day, had caused earthquakes to be raised, for which the Romans cut down the timbers round about. Now, this is the location of the fosse. This is a map that was done 1865 to 1868 by Captain Charles Wilson and Captain Charles Ward of the Palestine Exploration Fund. And so Charles Ward located the fosse. Dan Bahat, who is one of the most knowledgeable men on the Temple Mount, he is one of Israel's greatest archaeologists. I recommend any of his books, any of his articles and materials. He told us a secret. Easy way to spot the fosse is that the trees are going to be cypress trees, and they have a root that goes straight down. Where you see the cypress trees, they outline the fosse. And there's a sidewalk built right over it. You walk right over the fosse. But the Baris, now you see these cisterns here? See those right there? And there's a small one right here. This is where the Antonia originally was. This is right here. This is where the Baris, and he enlarged it all the way up to this pool. This is called the Struthian Pool. You can go see the Struthian Pool. If you go down the Western Wall Tunnel, you'll see half of it. You have to go into St. Anne's. It's St. Anne's, yeah. There's a convent, and you could go down into St. Anne's and see the other side of the Antonia, as well as part of the pavement of the Antonia. It's very interesting because inside there they have where the Roman soldiers drew games, like dice games, in order to torture people that they're about to crucify. And but that is right up, that's going to be right up in this area right here. And then Antonia came actually all the way, all of this was Antonia. And but the Baris originally, at the time Pompey's coming, and Pompey fills this niche in. So here, we'll come back to that. I want to read this to you. This is from Biblical Archaeology Review in November, December 1995. The article is called Jerusalem Down Under, Tunneling Along Herod's Temple Mount Wall by Dan Bahat. The northern limit of the pre-Herodian Temple Mount at the line of the northern edge of the platform on which the Dome of the Rock now sits also eliminates the suggestion made by Asher Kaufman that the Solomonic and Herodian temples were located north of the Dome of the Rock. If they were located where Kaufman suggests, they would have fallen off the northern side of the then Temple Mount into a deep gully to the fosse. On this point, I agree with Rittmeyer. Okay? So we're going to go back. And here, the problem, here's your fosse right here. And his northern wall is in the ditch. You can't do that. It doesn't work. See, it has to match the archaeology. Now, we have several criteria. That as we study the temple, number one, it has to agree with Scripture. Okay? And that is a rule that all the Sanhedrin stringently followed, is that it has to agree with Scripture, cannot contradict Scripture. Because there is a rule in the temple, you can't change it. You cannot add to it. You cannot take away from it. You may not change it. It is as bad as changing a scripture, because we're going to see that the plan of the temple was given by the Spirit of God. It's literally going to tell you that in the scripture. And you cannot change what God has put down. And so the second thing is it has to agree with halakha. Remember, everything has to agree with the scripture. The halakha is how you observe those commandments. So third, it has to be functional. It has to be where it can operate. And fourth, or is there any archaeological evidence that will either confirm or annul what we are arriving at? Okay? And there has been a process of we go with our best understanding, and then frequently it has to be modified. We learned some information and we were wrong. Now, right where the Holy of Holies is in Kaufman's his floor plan, there's a little dome there called the Dome of the Spirits. And like I said, I used to teach it because I didn't have enough information at the time. But when I saw this won't work, we had to go back and say, all right, we've learned some, and now we move forward. Okay? So, here, this is why I have this illustration. This, you see this illustration right here? It says floor plan without pour bar. That's pour bar is going to be right up here. And this building will move further to the west. And this building will move further to the west, making our middle gate area also bigger. Look at this. See the difference? We found this building. This was one of my discoveries. We found this building in 2012. And so we had to go back, and we had to start working with this new piece of information. But here's the northern side of the temple, and you see that it comes up close to the fosse. That's going to be number 15. All right. So we're going to go quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This is just to give you a brief diving board, give you a place to start where you can look at this and you can study it out. And feel free to send me emails. I'll give you my email, and send me emails. You can ask questions. I'll tell you, I am terrible about reading my emails. I get behind, and sometimes it's my schedule, and sometimes it's just life. Okay? But there is a second theory. This is put forth by an architect in Tel Aviv named Tuvia Sagiv. And we call this the Southern Theory. So the Southern Theory places the temple building right over what's called the Al-Quds fountain. Now, the Al-Quds fountain is a Muslim fountain where they wash their hands and wash their feet. We believe, and Dan Bahat agrees with us. We know he agrees with us, but we have not gotten with him to get he's going to be the guy that's going to be, he has the information on it. But we believe that it is over a temple period fountain. So I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. Now here we have, let's go back. Here is your original, let's go actually to the more current. Here is your original 500 cubits by 500 cubits. This was discovered by Lee Ribmeier and by Professor Benjamin Bazar. And there is an article. Tell me if I could get you to even help me. If you could find an article by Ribmeier in here, and we'll just pass it around, okay? But it's on establishing, developing the various courtyards and the growth developments of the temple. And you have to understand that this was written back in the late 1990s or early 2000, right after, we keep getting more information, so everybody is going and having to rewrite the articles as we find more. Okay, so okay, yeah, I need my clicker. Here it is. Okay, this is called locating the original Temple Mount. So let me pass this around, and you can look up Lee Rittmeyer's articles. Now here you see the yellow. Is that yellow or is that green? Green. I'm colorblind. Okay, this is the area that was added to by Shimon Hasmoneh, the brother of Judah the Maccabee, and we're told that he expanded the temple to the south in the book of Maccabees. Well, we found the extension. We can see it on the eastern wall, and there is inside one of the Muslim museums on the top, there is remnants of the wall on the inside that we can see. Okay, so we know where this area is. Let's go forward here. This is the older, but Herod extended further to the south. That gate I was talking to you about is going to be right below this 3. And then he extended to the west. And you notice that we have it kind of cut off here. This would be the northern edge of the temple. All of this will be the area of the Antonia. Okay, so let's go forward. So here, notice how small his temple is. Very small for dealing with the numbers of people. Now, I will say that this temple is larger than the one that Martin had down at the city of David. It is larger. His cubit that he had down there was less than 6 inches, okay, which is impractical. You can't have a cubit. Yes, well, cubit, there are different cubit sizes. And so but the smallest that a cubit can be is 14 inches. And it goes up from there. It cannot be over 26 inches. That's the max, 14 to 26. And so you cannot accommodate even a daily service, much less a festival in a temple this size. Notice that he has no large buildings whatsoever. Now, here is the problem. This is where the Al-Quds fountain is. See the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Here's the Muslim platform. This is where Kaufman's was. This is Tuvia Sagiv's. The problem with Tuvia Sagiv's is, well, here's the Al-Quds fountain again. Okay? And let me show you. We're going to back up here. And right here, and then right over here, here's the fountain. Let me go back. See the mikvah? There's a mikvah and a mikvah. The Al-Quds fountain's right between them. Now, in the Mishnah, in the tractate Yoma, which deals with Yom Kippur, was also written by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It says in chapter 3, Mishnah 2, says this is a general rule in the temple that what's the phrase, Debbie? If one covers his feet. If one covers his feet, he must go to the mikvah. If one passes water, he has to wash his hands and feet before he can come into the inner courtyards. So covering the feet, it's also an expression that we see with King Saul. When he went into the cave at En-Gedi, remember David was hiding, and David cut off the kanaf, or the corner of his garment. What was on the corner of his garment? The tzitzit. But it says that he covered his feet. And what it means is he was having a bowel movement. And so that's what it's referring to. I mean, David was awful close here, okay? And so, but the Al-Quds fountain, we believe, sits right over the fountain that was there for them to wash their hands and feet. And there is actually a conduit that comes from the main conduit that comes from the pools of Solomon that goes to this mikvah, and it goes through the Al-Quds fountain to that mikvah. And you see this right here. You see that? That's the conduit that's feeding the conduits where we believe were the toilets. And so we're going to go forward. So that's the location of the Alcos fountain. That's where he places his Holy of Holies. But we have a problem. His southern wall is in the area that wasn't even built to the time of the Hasmoneans. So you can't, that means that Solomon's temple was there. And you can't build in an area that wasn't there. Do you understand? His southern wall is in an area of the Temple Mount that wasn't part of the Temple Mount. And you can't do that. Now this, we've already discussed this, and so I'm not going to spend time here. You've seen this illustration. These are from Morton's books. I didn't show this one. This is where they have that it's laid out as a Roman fortress. And one of their statements in there is that, hey, it was built as a Roman fortress. It was not built as a Roman fortress. It was built as a Jewish fortress, originally by the Hasmoneans, and then modified and enlarged by Herod. And then later the Romans, following Herod's death, take over it. So something that I need to go into here is, why is this such a sensitive issue? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, and foremost, by all means, is just like what we read in the Parsha, is that you have to have the right place. In other words, that altar has to be where Abraham built his altar, where David built his altar. You can't move it. You can't modify it. The Jews couldn't move it. The Sanhedrin was bound to it. And how many of you are familiar with Art Scroll? Art Scroll. Art Scroll is a big major Jewish publishing company. Art Scroll. This is a Tanakh that's put out by Art Scroll. You can buy Siddurim. You can buy their Mishnah series. I have it. And I use it. But it's not the main one I use. Okay, it's expensive. It's like $900. The main one that I use and I recommend to people, if you're going to be serious about reading this, is called the Kahati Mishnah. That's going to be spelled. Debbie, will you write for me? The Kahati Mishnah, just put it up there. And it costs about $300. You can, what I would recommend first off, if you're going to study this and you want to have this as a resource, buy the volumes that you're interested in first. Read them. Learn how to read this, because it's going to be, yes. That right now. Thanks. Rather than spending a lot of money that might be books just gathered dust, okay? But learn, say Passover. It's going to be called Pesachim. And it'll describe the ceremony of killing the Passover lambs. It'll describe how they cook the lambs. It's going to give you a lot of information that when you read in the scriptures, it's going to make it come alive. You'll see things you didn't see. But the Art Scroll, it is valuable, but all the rabbis that we work with over in Israel, they use the Kahati, and it's good. It has good commentary. It's easy reading, and I would highly recommend it. But in the Art Scroll, in the tractate Sukkah, which is going to deal, of course, with the festival of Sukkot, it has some wonderful information on the temple. They have in chapter 5 in Mishnah 2 is talking about on the second day of the festival. Then and so actually this is going to be the first day of the festival. They have the night time, because it starts at night, right? 15th of Tishri, and that next day they go down to the court of the women. They're in the upper court, so they have to go down to the court of the women. And here, men and women can assemble children, and they build a balcony for the women. That balcony is not there the rest of the year. And so the question immediately comes up, where do they get the authority for it? Because Scripture says you may not add to it. So the authority comes from Zechariah chapter 12, where it states that they will look upon, it's great messianic prophecy, verse 10, that they will look upon me whom they pierced. Then it says, the men of Judah and their wives mourned separately. The men of Simeon and their wives mourned separately. Now, they determined that this is during the festival of Sukkot that they're mourning. And so, based upon the passage, so they said, okay, obviously the men and the women are separated. And that was the authority for it. Now, here, we have to have the exact location. There is a problem in the non-Jewish Torah world. Now, y'all are kind of in a different realm. Y'all are part of the Jewish Torah world, okay? The unseen, it's not like you have the returning Israel, Ephraim. I believe that that a lot of the people that are out there are from the lost tribes, okay? But I don't believe necessarily that everybody is. And I believe it's wrong to go around and say, oh, I'm from Ephraim or whatever, unless you know, okay? Unless you are able to establish that. I believe that we'll find out when Messiah comes. Now, one of the big problems, though, in this world that is not going to be considered halakhically Jewish, okay, is that there is an anti-Semitic attitude of the Jews of Rome. Or the Jews changed this, they changed that, they changed this. And the majority of this is from people that have not read those texts for themselves. And they have seen things on the internet, they've heard teachers come out, and things are taken out of context. And so I would encourage you to check it out. But to say that the Temple Mount is down at the city of David when we can prove it's not is another instance of saying the Jews are wrong or the Jews changed this. And I believe that it's a time that we start to pull together rather than we build walls between us. Okay? It gives fuel to the Muslims to say, the Jews don't need to go to the Temple Mount. You don't need to go to the Temple Mount because it wasn't here. It's down there. And it strengthens their claim to the top of the Temple Mount. Okay, so let's go forward. This we talked about last night. I just want to show you a couple pictures. This is where he's talking about Jerusalem. All right, this is from the book that you buy at the World Museum. That's WOHL. It's in the Jewish Quarter. Rico had never even heard of it. He didn't know it was there. The World Museum preserves the excavations of a 385-foot section of the upper city west of the Temple Mount from the time of Herod up until Jerusalem's destruction in 70 AD. The upper city on the high western hill was a residential area for wealthy merchants and influential priestly families. Connected directly to the temple by a viaduct over the Tyropian Valley, the upper city was a convenient home for families and officials with temple duties. The area became available for excavation when Israeli authorities proceeded to rebuild the ancient Jewish quarter following its destruction by the Jordanians during the Six-Day War in 1967. According to Israeli law, whenever construction work uncovers ancient remains, the Antiquities Authority must be notified. Construction is halted until the remains are investigated and sometimes excavated. Such was the case here, when archaeologists uncovered 6 palatial Herodian period homes built on terraces descending down the slope of the western hill. overlooking the Temple Mount. The partially restored site occupies the basement of the Wool Museum, located at the edge of Harvest Square, the center of the restored Jewish quarter of Jerusalem's Old City. Now, basically what happened is when they built these buildings, it's the museum, but above it is they have apartments. They have all kinds of offices and businesses, but they constructed it in a way that the building is built over the excavations, not where they build and it's where you can go down into it and see it, and it's there for us. Constructed in the style of Roman villas, each home was built around a central courtyard and had 2 or more stories. Okay, 2 or more stories. Elaborate water systems with large cisterns assured an adequate water supply even in the dry summer months. Rain was the only water source. The most striking feature of the western part of the museum is a complex of mikvahot, ritual baths. A mikvah requires a minimum of around 200 gallons of pure rain or spring water. It must be about 5 feet deep or more. Cut into stone, these pools were emptied and presumably filled by hand. One residence, dubbed the mansion by excavators, covered an area of 6,500 square feet. The number of its ritual baths, 6,500 square feet for a house, by any standard, is huge. That is a mansion. The number of its ritual baths led to the theory that it was the dwelling of a high priest. And I totally believe, and I had taught this for a while, and I saw that Lee Rittmeyer, actually he teaches exactly the same thing, that this is the house of Ananias, the father-in-law of Joseph Caiaphas, who was a high priest. Now, here's something you might not know. In the Talmud, it talks about the family of Hanan being crooks. Then it talks about the family of Katros, and it says they're crooks too. And it lists off about 4 of the high priest families. And it says, okay, this one, he's going to put his family members in all the jobs, okay? So it gives this indictment against them. Now, the southern edge of the Temple Mount, you can still see, and they're, by the way, going to be in these articles, and they have just run some new articles. This is an update. You can get through the Bar Archive, but they have what is called the Encyclopedia of the Excavations of Israel. It's a 4-volume set, and this is the update to it. And I printed this out right before we came here, but they have an update on the shops that you can see along the edge of the wall, both on the southern side and the western side, on the southwestern side. And these shops were filled with pitch and tar, flammable materials by the Romans, and set on fire, and they left scorch marks on the limestone. And so we see the imprint of them. Now, at the top was a huge stoa. It's called the Royal Stoa. You remember when I had the guys come up and grab their arms around? That is for the columns of the Royal Stoa. That is where the money changers were, all of that area. This is called the Bazaar of Hanan. Hanan is how you say Ananias in Hebrew. And in the Talmud, it goes into as a wicked place. And it says that they are robbing the people. It wasn't the money changers. I haven't watched football in years. Okay, I haven't seen a Super Bowl since the 60s. Sports aren't a part of my life anymore. I just don't have the time. And but our family, our kids are all into it and everything. I'm not against it. I just don't. It's not something I do. But I know this about the Super Bowl. I know that they run commercials. And I'm just going to pick something like 7-Up or Doritos, okay? And they will pay this exorbitant amount of money for a 1-minute commercial, 30 seconds during the Super Bowl. Why? Well, they know everybody but me is watching it. And they've got everybody. At the temple, the people that are going to sell the various items that are going to be needed in the temple, you have money changers because you can't use Roman coins, Greek coins. You can't use coins with the images of emperors and gods on them in God's temple. So you have to change your money. So the money changers charge this exorbitant fee because they have to pay to the high priest, to Hanan, the right for that concession. He created a dynasty, Ananias. And so he was high priest. And see, he doesn't get to stay as long as he wants because the Romans are the ones that are selling it. Herod did it first. Then the Herods took over and found they could make money. And so they sell the high priesthood, and you're in there as long as they let you. And so he will have 5 sons, 1 son-in-law, Joseph Caiaphas, and he's going to have a grandson that will all serve as high priests. Now, when they come into office, they're going to try to get as much money as they can because they know the Romans are going to sell that position at some point, and whoever's got the most money keeps the office. So I want to tell you that the priesthood, I believe, was very commendable. The priesthood. Only, we're talking about, there's like 2 families that fought in that last century, the family of Boethus and the family of Hanan, and they were the godfathers. All right? And so here we have this 6,500 square foot mansion. And I believe that it's the house of Ananias. Next door, and I can prove this one, is the house of Caiaphas. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit. Elegant mosaic floors, for example, had no depictions of humans or animals that the Jews regarded as a violation of the second commandment. One room appears to have been either a living room or a reception hall with a magnificent mosaic floor in red, black, and white tiles. Another, even larger room boasted plastered walls imitating marble panels or large stones like those of the Temple Mount retaining walls. Remains of a cypress wood ceiling were found that had collapsed when the Romans burned the building in 70 AD. Now, this room right here is the receiving room in the palace that I believe is Ananias. That would be where Yeshua would have one of his trials. Here, notice these. Now, you're looking down, but this wall is going to stand up to the top of my head. Notice how stone upon stone. Okay? So, I'm going to go forward. This is out of Antiquities 863. So the king had the foundations for the temple laid very deep in the ground. Okay, we talked about this before. I already read this to you, that the foundation trenches should still be wherever the temple is. All right. This is how you can know that the temple was at the Temple Mount. This stone is called the trumpeting stone. How many of you do Havdalah? Y'all do Havdalah? I'm sure some of you do. It is the conclusion of the Shabbat. It is the conclusion of the Shabbat in the start of the week. So in Havdalah, Havdalah means to separate. And we find the word originally in Genesis chapter 1. In the Havdalah ceremony, you have several elements. You have a glass of wine. You have a incense box, a spice box. You have a, I want to find this article. You have a torch. Goodness gracious, I can't find it. You have a torch with 4 wicks. It's called a lapid. Now you start off and here we go. It's called when the priest, here, this is the Havdalah. This is a spice box. It's called a bigdal. And then we have, next to it, we have the lapid, the torch with 4 wicks. And so, you can't light a fire on Shabbat. So to signify that the Shabbat's over, you end it by lighting the torch. And so you hold the glass of wine up, the cup of wine, and you say the Hagafen. And then you set it down. You don't drink it. Then you pick up the spice box, you say the blessing for the spices, and you pass them around, and everybody smells them to remember all the sweetness of the Shabbat, to carry you forward to the next week. Then you take the lapid, the torch, and you do a blessing for the lighting of the fire, and you pass it around, and people will hold their fingers like this, open like this. It actually is speaking of passage of the coming of the Messiah in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 3. God came forth with rays of light flashing from his hand. Then you look at your palms. You know why you look at your palms? You ever been to the Holocaust Museum in Israel? What is it called? Yad Vashem. Yad means hand. Vashem, name. Name in the hand. Your name is in his hand. And so you look at the palm of your hand and your fingernails, because after you die, your fingernails will grow. It speaks of life after death. Then you extinguish. There's one more part before you extinguish. You have what's called the Hamavil prayer. The Hamavil prayer goes, Hamavil ben Kodesh lechol, to separate between the holy and the common. And then the prayer goes on. And then you extinguish the flame in the wine, and Havdalah's over. You're in the week. Okay, so this, in this article, when the priest trumpeted the onset of the Sabbath, part of it was broken off. Now, I'm going to show you how it was broken off. It was broken off by Captain Charles Warren. You've heard me mention his name several times. He became very famous, by the way. He became a general. He was knighted as a lord. He was the British commissioner in charge of the search for Jack the Ripper. And so you see him in the movies and everything. He was not allowed to dig on the Temple Mount. The Muslims wouldn't let him. So he sank shafts all around the outside walls. So there's one at the southwestern corner. There is one when you go down the western wall tunnel. You'll walk over a plexiglass place in the floor, and you're able to look down into his shaft. He sunk a shaft right there. There were several on the eastern side, and he had some amazing discoveries. And people would travel from Europe, and he built tunnels underneath, and women would go down in Victorian dresses, and they would go and they would see the walls of the temple back at that time. Well, his shaft on the southwestern corner, he had a drill that he was using, and he broke the stone, and they never found the other part of it. Okay, but what they discovered, they have deciphered the stone, and I'll just tell you, let me pass this around. This is from Biblical Archaeology Reviewed, December 1986. What they found is that on the edge, right here, this says Lebeit Tikiah. Tikiah is the blast of a trumpet. Tikiah. I'm not sure what this letter is, but basically, the house of the trumpeting, to separate between the holy and the common. Separate between the holy and the common. Now, here, This is the southwestern corner. And you see the stones right here that are shaded. This is from Lean Ripmeyer. These are the original stones. And the shaft was right here, right at that corner. Now here, this is from an article out of Biblical Archaeology Review, but you can also read about it in The Mountain of the Lord by Professor Benjamin Bazar. The southwestern corner, the massive Herodian Temple Mount retaining wall is in the background right here. All of this is gone now. All of this is gone. There's a picture of Dennis standing back over here on the street, okay, in Lynn Ripmeyer's book, The Quest, okay. The retaining wall is in the background. In the left foreground is part of an early Muslim Umayyad palace right here, okay. They've removed that. A complex which in part reused stones toppled from the Temple Mount when it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. The well-laid pavement stones are a portion of a Herodian street, right here, portion of a Herodian street, parallel to the southern wall, okay, the wall here, as well as going this way, which ascends to the southern Hulda gates. Below the man in the center. Now, here's the man in the center, I think. Is that? That's a doorway. I don't see the man.
Yeah, it's up the wall up there.
Where? Right here?
Right there, I think.
Up here. Ah, there he is. Below the man in the center are the first few steps of the stairway. Yeah, there are steps that go up because remember those shops I told you that were part of the Bazaar of Hanan? And where all the shops were, there was a walkway over the top of it. It was like a big sidewalk. And so below the man in the center are the first few steps of the stairway, which is part of the main north-south pavement. When we excavated the beautifully paved Herodian street, by the way, this article is by Professor Bazar. When we excavated the beautifully paved Herodian street adjacent to the southern wall and near the southwestern corner of the enclosure wall, we found a particularly large ashlar block. I'm going to show it to you. I have been trying, I need to contact some people in the archaeological departments to get the archaeological report on this stone because I want the weight of it. We found a particularly large ashlar block. On the inside was a niche where a man might stand, especially if the ashlar were joined to another, which would enlarge the niche. On the outside was a carefully and elegantly incised Hebrew inscription, Labayit Hatikiya Ha Lacharetz, to the place of trumpeting to declare. And they have determined that it goes on to say, to declare the separation between the holy and the common. Okay? If the restoration of the world declare is correct, the rest of the missing part of the inscription probably went on to tell us more about the declaring of the beginning and the end of the Shabbat, which they have now confirmed. This article that I'm sitting around is the confirmation on that. All right? The stone had been toppled during the Roman destruction of the temple onto the street below it, where it had lain for nearly 2,000 years until we uncovered it. It must have originally come from the pinnacle of the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount. From a spot on top of the temple chambers, a priest would blow a trumpet on Sabbath Eve to announce the arrival of the Sabbath and the cessation of all labor, to announce on the following evening the departure of the Sabbath and the resumption of all labor. The entire city was visible from this spot on the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. The clarion call of the trumpet will reach the furthest markets of the city. Now, here is one shaft. See it at the edge? Right here. The place of the trumpeting, very likely, 19th century explorer, archaeologist Charles Ward inadvertently broke the stone, digging his excavation shaft, seen as a broken line in this drawing, through field that buried the southwest corner. Warren pierced the Herodian pavement at this corner and probably cracked the edge of the trumpeting stone, which lay where it had fallen on the pavement, one end protruding into his shaft. Now, we want to catch this. The stone was laying right here, one end of it into the shaft. So it's at the ground, okay? I'm going to take you back. We're going to go all the way back to Lynn Rittmeyer's drawing. You remember how I climbed up on the stage and said, okay, you're going to push the top stone off, and it's going to hit the pavement, right? And then you push the next layer, it's going to land on top of it. And so your first layer might be this high, your second layer is going to be this high. Your third layer, where you see this mark, they weren't able to destroy the walls any further because the debris had filled that high. Now look at the size of the people here. You're talking 60 feet of debris, and this is at the bottom. Yes, Debbie? Yeah, that's the spring stone. That's right. We have pictures from before 1967 of Arabs sitting on that stone with their feet on the ground. And everything below it was debris that was toppled off the top of the mountain. So now it's going to get even more. This is going to blow you away. Oh, this is Josephus wrote about this stone. Okay, so was erected above the roof of the priest's chambers at the point where was the custom of the priest to stand and give notice by sound of trumpet in the afternoon of the approach and of the following evening of the close of every seventh day, announcing to the people the respective hours for ceasing work and for resuming their labors. You also have it in the Mishnah. It's in the tractate Sukkah. It's in the last Mishnah of that tractate that it's going to talk about, and it gives the actual wording which they determined based upon the few remaining letters that's what it would say. It was basically, it says lahamadvil ben kodesh lecho, to separate between the holy and the common. And so now Jewish Wars, Book 4, paragraphs 580 to 583. Now this is a drawing. This is actually one of our drawings. Lee Rittmeyer has one almost identical to it, but you see the priest up here at the top. Now, notice how the top is shaped. See, it's different from the stones down here. Well, how do they know that? They found the corner piece. And you see that right there? The original is, these are original stones here. But this stone here, that's a plaster cast of the original, which is in the Israel Museum. Now look at this. See where the priest stood? Here's the trumpeting stone. Now I want to find out how much these weigh, because they were found at the bottom of the pile of debris, not at the top. This confirms it can only be the temple. Yeah, that's Michael Dye, Deanna Dye's husband. And so, well, let me go back. There is no way that you can have the temple any place but here. I mean, I'm not meaning to make light, but I want to make it clear. Okay, it would be impractical for the Romans to say, okay, we destroyed the Temple Mount down at the city of David. Now, it's only a third of a mile uphill. I want 100 of you Roman soldiers to pick this up, carry it to this location. We're going to put it right at that corner, and then we'll throw a lot of rock on top of it. Just to confuse people 2,000 years from now, okay? And again, I'm not trying to ridicule, okay? But I'm trying for everybody to see this nails it. This confirms it. All right. Yeah. Can y'all see this? I've stood right there. Okay? There's a picture of Dennis standing right here. So, Dennis, you've seen this, haven't you? Okay? And you've seen it, yeah. You want to make sure you go and see it, because to me, this clears the questions up. You might not understand the rest of the stuff on the temple or whatever, but this is a confirmed item from the temple. It's spoken of that in two sources, and we find it here, and it's amazing. Yes?
I was just going to say that seeing that was the high point of that whole trip. Just seeing that, because in a previous trip they hadn't had that excavation.
Right.
I saw that and it was just like, this is just amazing.
We, in fact, oh yeah. You're going to come out right there.
You know, you've seen these grades of these, no access, you're allowed beyond that point.
Dennis has got a story on that. Dennis stood right there and he said the sewer's right down there. Am I saying it right? It's not a sewer. I mean, it's a water drainage channel. It's for when it rains, the water from the street is going to run down into this drain. Yeah, gray water sewer. In the language of our, yes, sir.
Yeah, just to make the point, the Romans even had every reason not to do that, because they wanted to show what they had destroyed and where it was. That was the whole point of doing it.
Go find me some,
Look
please.
that stone and do somebody.
Go,
would have been
go ask Dennis. Some Kleenex. Oh, great. It's holding okay. All right. Look at the drawing, and you see the Muslim platform. Y'all see that? Right here. Okay, the Muslim platform. What we're going to talk about right now is in the box. I hope. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. This, we have two cisterns right here. And we have what anciently was not a cistern, but has been converted by the Muslims into a cistern. In fact, they have a water fountain on top of it. And I would not drink the water from that water fountain, because the water in there, that cistern probably has not been cleaned since the Temple Mount was standing. Okay? But this is, by the way, you can get a book. Right now it's out of print, but you can still buy them on the internet. They were like $140 from the Palestine Exploration Fund. Now I think they run like $500 or $600 on the internet. But it is a catalog done by David Jacobson and Shmuel Gibson of all the drawings, measurements, notes from the chief explorers from the Palestine Exploration Fund between the years 1865 and 1870. And so Charles Wilson, Claude Condor, Charles Warren, and Conrad Schick. And it is a catalog that you can get. And it is, if you're in this kind of research, it is the tool to have. So anyway, we have a cistern right here that's called, in Arabic, it's called Bir Ha-Afir, which means the bird cistern, because it's shaped like a bird. Then this one, you see how it's shaped like a kidney. Now, over here, do you see right here, there's another one shaped like a kidney. It's kind of, this is one that went to the Antonia. These two cisterns are the oldest datable cisterns on the Temple Mount. We can date them to the Hasmonean period. That doesn't mean they're the oldest cisterns on the Temple Mount. It's the oldest ones we can date. And so this is called the Bir Es Sawani. Bir Es Sawani means the cistern of the fire rock. Cistern of the fire rock. Now here, there's a numbering system. In fact, there are two numbering systems. One is called the Warren numbering system. That's what Lane Rittmeyer uses. The other is called the Schick numbering system, which is what I use, and what is used in the catalog. The Schick numbering system is more complete than the Warren system. So it's going to be number 27 in the Schick system. Okay, so here, this is the bird cistern. This is the Bir Es Sawani. And right here, this is, again, it was not originally a cistern, but it was converted in a later period to a cistern. There is a stairway that is there today, but it sits over an ancient stairway going down to this area. There's also, at this end, they had these little dots here, or wellheads, that were put there when they converted it to a cistern. Here's your wellheads here for these cisterns. And so here, in this end, there is a stone stairway that's circular going down. Now, this is how they would look if you were looking straight down on them. Excuse me. Well, up here, if you're looking straight down on them, but this shows you the topography. Okay, so this became very powerful because we have, a cubit in Hebrew is called an amma. And so we have the court of the women, which is going to be lower. There are 15 steps going up from the court of the women to the Azarah, your higher courtyard. Now, each of the steps, we're told in the Tractate Midot, are going to be half amma by half amma. So 1/2 cubit by 1/2 cubit. In the courtyard down here, they use the 5 handbreadths cubit, or the cubit of Moses. But in this courtyard, they use the 6 handbreadths cubit because it's higher in sanctity. It takes a bigger cubit. Now, there are 15 steps that lead from the court of the women to the Azarah. 15 steps are based upon the 15 Psalms of Ascent, and they're based upon your Seder has 15 ports to it. There are 15 steps to Jewish worship. Everything is there. Everything is for a purpose and a reason. In the Midrash, there are 15 steps to the ladder of Jacob's saw going from earth to heaven, and the angels ascending and descending. Okay, so what we need to expect is that this courtyard will be at a higher level than this courtyard. And so, lo and behold, this is the Muslim platform, and it drops off exactly at that point what we should expect. Now, this is on the northern wall of the Azarah. We should have a building, if that is the northeastern corner of the Azarah. There should be a building located right there. The building, we are given the names of the buildings, the order of the buildings, starting on the southwest and coming around the east, going on the northern side from the east to the west. And so, I lost it. What did I do? I need help. Here we go. We're back. Okay, let me go forward. I want to see. In other words, a building right here. So here's your Azarah. And you see down here at the court of the women, there are small chambers on the side. They're 40 cubits by 40 cubits. Now, each of these chambers, they stored oil in this one. This one is called in Hebrew the Lishkat Hanatzir. It is the chamber of the Nazarites. This is where Acts 21 would take place, where Paul had taken the Nazarite vow, had his hair cut off, and so forth. That would have been right in this chamber. This is where he's going to eat the korbanot that he has to eat, and as well as his hair has to be burned. And he's doing this with 4 other guys. This is called the Lishkat Ha'itzim. This is the chamber of the wood, where or the woods, where they inspect the wood. These are disqualified priests because they have some kind of blemish, cannot serve in the Azarah. So they have other duties, and one of their duties is to inspect the wood to make sure it's kosher, make sure it doesn't have any molds, doesn't have any termites or anything along those lines. Now this is called the Lishkat HaMetzorim. Okay, the Metzora is one with biblical leprosy. Biblical leprosy is called Sarat. So if you have Sarat, you have to go to a Kohen, and the Kohen is going to look at the spot that you have on your arm or your scalp or wherever it is. And there are all types of things that were given in the Torah, and then this is going to be further developed out in understanding a lot of it in the Mishnah, in the tractate called Negaim. Negaim means sores. And so what we're told is that in the Torah passion, it tells us that they have to immerse themselves. After that they've been declared clean, they're going to have to immerse themselves. They're going to have to bring certain korbanot, and they are going to have to go to a mikvah. Now, in Tractate Negaim, it tells us that the mikvah was below the chamber, the Lishkat HaMetzorim. And so that's great, because a mikvah is carved in the stone, and you can't move it. You can't disguise it, but you can find it. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this picture in a moment, but we're going to go back here. This, I think it's from my book, Nation the Pattern, the hardcover book. It says, located in the southeastern corner of the Azarah was a large building, which was 100 by 50 cubits. Also, the building stood at 8 stories high, huge building. There were a number of significant chambers within the building. The building was known as the building of the spark or the flame. Now, in Hebrew, we say Beit Hanitzotz. Beit Hanitzotz. The Arabs call the cistern below this location the Bir Es Sawani, which is the cistern of the fire rock or spark. Beit Hanitzotz means building of the spark. So basically, the Bir Es Sawani is the Arabic name for the cistern below this building. In other words, this would be called in Hebrew the Bir Hanitzotz. Okay, in other words, lots of places in Israel they locate because the Arabs retained the original name for them, that's how they found Shiloh, is from the Arab name for it. So here, immediately east of this building, the elevation dropped to that of the Ezrat Nashim, the court of the women. There should be a mikvah below the northwestern building adjoining to the Ezrat Nashim, the court of the women. The building was known as the Lishkat HaMetzorim, the chamber of the lepers. Therefore, this mikvah would be just to the east of the Beit Hanitzotz. All right. Comrade Schick found in Cistern 27 steps going down. It was originally what we believe to be the mikvah. Okay? What I'm presenting to you now is we have located a number of the buildings. And what we call these are points of congruence. We find from the scripture, from the various texts with the Josephus or the Jewish texts of the Mishnah, the Tosafot and so forth, or sometimes we'll find a clue out of the temple scroll. we put this with the archaeological discoveries, and we're able to determine, and it has to be determined by more than one thing. We have to have where we have numbers of items confirming this location, but once we find the building, it helps us to locate the next buildings and the next buildings. They become what we call points of congruence. So here, you see this is the 15 steps going up. This is the Beit HaNitzos. Right here, this is called the Shor Nicanor, the Nicanor Gate. And there is what's called a wicket to the north and one to the south. A wicket means a smaller gate. It's very interesting. I'm going to show you this real quick. The Metzora, first off, let's picture that down this way is going to be the temple building. Now, the temple building has within it, there has two main rooms, the HaKodesh and the Kodesh HaKodeshim. The HaKodesh has another name. It's also called Ochel Moed, the Tent of Meeting. In the Torah, it says that the Metzora must have his ceremony performed before the Ochel Moed, all right, for the Tent of Meeting. So it's going to, the Ochel Moed is this area right here. But to be before the Ochel Moed, that's a controversial question. What constitutes before the Ochel Moed? The Azarah, all of this area. But there's a problem. Until one has gone through the ceremony of cleansing for the sarat, for the leprosy, you are not allowed to step in to the Azarah. So you have this problem. How the ceremony has to be conducted before in the Azarah, but the guy that the ceremony has to be conducted on can't step into the Azarah. So here's how they did it. They're going to have to apply blood to his right big toe and oil, and to his right thumb, and inside his ear right here. So he stands right at this location in the wicket, northern wicket. And he's going to stand on one foot, raise his foot up, he's barefooted, and they put blood on his toe and his thumb. Yeah, blood and oil. And then from the sacrifice. Then he'll put his right thumb across, and then he puts his hand, and he turns his head where his face is always to the Holy of Holies. And they put it here. This is also where Asota is going to stand as she drinks the bitter waters. It's also where Miriam stood when the dedication ceremonies for Yeshua were taking place. It's in the northern wicket. Okay, just a little information I thought you might be interested in. We had the question. In most of the temple drawings that you saw, the 40 cubit square chambers within the court of the women are put on the inside because the text is unclear. It says it's 135 cubits, well, 135 cubits, and there are four buildings in the corners. And so you don't know if that's on the inside or the outside. Finding the mikvah confirmed it was on the outside. I had a meeting in 2008, in August of 2008, with Rabbi Ariel and Rabbi Richmond. And in that meeting, they had a problem on the Temple Mount. The Muslims had a problem with one of their water pipes. And they had to dig up a whole lot coming around in front of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, going to the east side, and then back up. And in that, like 2 weeks before I got there with my information, they had this report that would confirm that it was on the outside, not on the inside. And everything should be confirmed numbers of times. And always we go with, we're working from where we know, and we're trying to piece it together. But, the closer we get, the more that God is going to give us. And that might mean we have to back up and re-examine our position, and then we go forward from there. And we've had to do, I had a model maker at my office, and he quit because I kept on coming in and saying, tear out that wall. All right, this one you're going to love. This is a drawing that my artist did that I had working with me back several years back. And this is called the monumental stairway. This is what's called the sorag. Sorag is going to have, it's going to be 2 cubits high in the 5 handbreadths cubit, and then it will have signs upon it in Greek and Latin that say if you're not Jewish, you're responsible for your death by going past this sign. Now, Paul gets accused of taking a non-Jew inside that area in Acts 21. They have found 2 of the signs. Josephus gave us the actual wording of the signs. They have an intact one that was found north of the Temple Mount by the Lion's Gate. It's in Istanbul, Turkey. And there is one that is a partial sign. It's worded exactly the same as the one in Istanbul that is in the Israel Museum that was also found in the area of the Temple Mount. And then there is a stairway. Now, the stairway, when we're reading in Josephus, he has his people coming from the south, which is the way that most of the worshipers approached, and he has 14 steps. In the Mishnah, they're coming from the east, from over here, and it has 12 steps. The reason is, it's very easy to explain, it's on a mountain. And so you have different elevations at different places. And in fact, Josephus says on the western side, there were no steps. The Romans took advantage of that. That's where they put their battering ram because they could get it up closer. Now, at the top is what is called, this is a platform that is 10 cubits wide. It's described both in the Mishnah as being 10 cubits wide and Josephus. It is a leveling platform. So the level that you see it on its southern side, it's going to be that same height on the other side. It just might have less steps going up to it. Or on the western side, the northern side, the western side, and so forth. Now, it is mentioned in the Tanakh. It's in the book of Lamentations. Usually it's translated the word rampart in English, but it is the kel. It comes from the word chol. You heard me use that a few minutes ago. Lahamadvil ben kadesh lechol. Chol means the common area. It is the common area to the inner courtyards. In the inner courtyards, you can't sleep. You can't sit down. Now you have a priest that is usually going to be older. He's a high priest. They're going to sequester him there for 7 days before Yom Kippur. I can tell you, the older you get, the more trips you take to the bathroom every evening. Okay, they don't have any toilets up there. And I think I did the thing about just hold it. Okay, but the guy is going to have to perform flawlessly on Yom Kippur. You're going to say, okay, you got to stand up for 7 days because you can't sit down, you can't lay down. So there is a ruling. You see this gate here? This gate is opening to the Kel. Now, if the gate on the other side opens to the Azarah, it has the rules and the Kedusha of the Azarah. The middle gates only open to the Azarah. But the corner gates extend all the way out to the Kel. So there is, if it opens to the Azarah, in that end of the building, you have the rules of the Azarah. But if it opens to the Kel, you have the rules of the Kel where you can stand, where you can sit, where you can do these things. This is the end of the building. In fact, it's in this building right here where the Sanhedrin Gedaliah, the great Sanhedrin, met, and they are required to sit as they give a judgment based upon Exodus 18, where Moses sat and judged the people. So here, this photograph changed my life. This photograph was only discovered in the 1990s. It was taken in the year 1870. It was taken by a man named Tirrett Drake. And he did a whole lot with Lieutenant Claude Condor. And he was from the Palestine Exploration Fund, and he would send his photographs back, and they would be published in the London newspaper. And they were very, very popular. Now, he took this in the early spring, like in March of 1970. He took it, and you see this stairway right here. He took it, and then he left, and he left to go to Jericho. It's about 15 miles, and it's all downhill. And so he goes on the way, he becomes violently ill. He is going to die from his sickness, but it's going to be like a month before he actually dies. Claude Cunder did his eulogy. I read it when I was in London at the Palestine Exploration Fund. And he was very, very popular. Yeah, but he was very young. He was like 30. And I don't know what killed him, whatever it was. You know, it was unexpected. And so all of his photographs would be normally sent back to the PEF, and then they would have them published in the newspaper. And so in this case, though, because he died, they packed up all his equipment, and they sent it to his family. And his family, after a while, he goes into the attic of the house. The house has remained in the same family all the way from the time that he was alive to the present. So in the 1990s, the family is going to clean out the attic. They knew the story of their famous ancestor that was a photographer for the Palestine Exploration Fund. So they find that equipment, and they donate it as a gift to the PEF, to the organization. So anyway, there is an archaeologist. You'll see him frequently on television, like History Channel, Discovery Channel, and his name is Shimon Gibson. And so Shimon was the photo archivist for the PEF. And so he's going through and he sees this photograph. He's looking at this new stuff coming in, and he's going, wait, what's this stairway? And immediately he thought, could this be the stairway that Josephus referred to that led up to the hell? Okay? All right, I have to just tell you the story. In my book and so forth, I go through it in detail, and in fact, I have I will be doing some videos just on the finding of the hell on the southern side. Anyway, Debbie, will you find Wars 5 for me? It's going to be one of these that does not have a cover on it. It's the only one, Josephus. Wars Book 5. It's the only one that doesn't have a little paper cover on it. And I'll get you turned to paragraph 200. That's it. Hold this while I find it. Okay. I'm going to start. All right, I'm going to start in paragraph 193. It says, proceeding across this towards the second court. So the first court he talks about is the outer court. Second court is going to be your inner courts of the temple. One found it surrounded by a stone balustrade, 3 cubits high, and exquisite workmanship. This is the soreg, where the signs were. In this, at regular intervals, stood slabs giving warning, some in Greek, others in Latin, characters of the law of purification, to wit that no foreigner was permitted to enter the holy place. For so the second enclosure of the temple was called. It was approached from the first by 14 steps. The area above was quadrangular and screened by a wall of its own. The exterior height of this wall, of this, actually 40 cubits, was disguised by the steps. The interior altitude was but 5 and 20. For the floor being built on a higher level, the whole was not visible from within, a portion being concealed by the hill. Beyond the 14 steps, there was a space of 10 cubits between them and the wall, forming a level terrace. That's the hill. All right? And it goes on. Then he's taking you into a building. Now, we had a problem. Let me go back. Way back. Still back. Get back some more. Here we go. All right. These buildings, first off, we knew that the dimensions of the Azara itself were 135 cubits going from here to here. We knew that going from the front to the back was 187 cubits. However, we didn't have dimensions of these buildings. Everybody till this time, this is like 1995 or so, that everybody had the hill close to the Azara. But now, if the hill was here, this is the monumental stairway. It meant that these buildings were this long, okay? Now, let me tell you how, this is almost, not quite, it's about 70 yards long. That's almost a football field. That is a big building, okay? And so we knew that they could not be bigger than 100 cubits. Anybody know why? 100 cubits is the size of the temple building. You can't have a building bigger than it. So we knew that it could not be more than 100 cubits, but for way out here, it was going to mean that rather than from here to here, it would be from here over to the other side. In other words, we would have a huge area that was not accounted for. So we had to prove it. Could this be? It was a theory. It was my theory. And we had to prove it. So let's go forward here. Right. If it was hell, it means that the temple building, it's going to kind of confirm the central theory, okay? And so, anyway, we had this theory, and I have a chapter on finding the Kel on the southern side. Now, there is a photograph. These were taken by a man named James McDonald. He was the photographer with Captain Charles Wilson in 1865. He took a photograph standing on the Muslim platform, and he takes it back towards the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, he's higher up on the platform, and his camera is pointed down. In our area, everything is flat as can be. We're right on the coast. We call a hill an overpass. All right, we have to go a distance to find a rock. Here, you can relate to how the terrain can be deceptive. It can give you an optical illusion of everything is flat when actually there's been an elevation change and you pick it up. You should be able to relate to that. The photograph shows a man standing by a tree. Now, this tree, he's like a Turkish guy, and he's standing, you can tell, owns something, but it looks like it's on the ground. Behind him, there is more of whatever he's standing on, And then there's some little patches of pavement. Well, it turns out he was standing on the top step of that monumental stairway, but from the angle, you could look at it, and if you didn't know what to look for, it's kind of like the bird on the back of the cereal box that you can't see. And so all of a sudden, all types of photographs, they started discovering of the monumental stairways. Nobody had ever paid any attention to it before. They even found a photograph of a man sitting on it, and I've got these in our book. Got a lot of these photographs of the book showing the monumental stairway, and more importantly is going to be this pavement that is going to be in the picture with the guy. Because Captain Charles Wilson, who measured the stairs, recorded the stairs, gave the tread of the steps as 7.5 feet. He marked that there was a pavement at the top. Now you understand why that would be important, because if this is the 14 steps referred to by Josephus, then that means that's the pavement called the Kel. And we know its size. We know its dimension, but we have to prove it. Okay, so in the Mishnah, December 8th, 1868, I'm going to come back to the Mishnah in a few moments. They have a big rainstorm in Jerusalem. Captain Charles Warren goes up on the Temple Mount, and they had a cave-in just north of the Muslim platform. And in fact, it's when I say just north, I mean like 5 feet. And it caved in, exposing a tunnel beneath it. Now, this tunnel, this is his drawing, by the way, and it's only 3 inches, the top of the tunnel below the ground. And it was filled with rubble. Let me see what other pictures I put in here. This is the tunnel right here, and there were 4 rooms. They're called bays. Now, the tunnel is going to be 18 feet and 4 inches across. And that number stands out to us because here's a tunnel that was discovered by Captain Charles Wilson. It's 18 feet, 4 inches across. There are 2 tunnels on this side. They're 18 feet, 4 inches. They're all Herodian stone. So we know that they're Second Temple period, and we see a pattern developing. By the roof, if it's what's called a barrel roof, in its dimensions, you're able to determine, was it a tunnel built to be used in the temple, or could it have been built by the Romans who come later, the Muslims, or the Crusaders? And that was a question of the monumental stairway. We were not certain that it was actually from the temple period. So anyway, in the Mishnah, we have this problem. And the problem is the dormitory for the priest. I'm going to show you where it is. I have to go back. Long ways. All right, here. This is the dormitory for the priest. It's called the Beit HaMoked, the house of the hearth. They had a fireplace in there. They also have several chambers. That's where they make the lechem hapanim, the bread of the face. That's where they have the lambs. There's a little stable there where they keep the lambs that are going to be offered in the daily offering for the tamid in the morning, the tamid in the afternoon. There is a chamber of the tokens right in this corner over here, chamber of the tokens, where you can't use money on the Temple Mount. So you pay your money at an office, they give you a token, and then you bring it to this chamber, and it's going to have, whether it's a bird, whether it's oil, whether it's flour, what kind it is, and then they will get the various materials for you. But the priests are going to stay in a little chamber here that's called the Nishkat Beit HaMoked. In the northwestern corner of it, in the Mishnah, it tells us there was a Mesiba. A Mesiba is going to be a winding stairway. It went underneath, and it says that the tunnel, it went this way and that with lights on each side. That is a Hebrew phrase meaning that it had turns in it. Now it's leading, it says, until they came to the Beit HaTevilah, the house of immersion. In the house of immersion, it says that there was a throne of glory there. Do you know what a throne of glory is? It's a toilet. Glory. There was a throne of glory with a lock upon it. Throne of dignity. You're right. Throne of dignity. Yeah, throne of dignity. See why she's here? Okay. Throne of dignity. Throne of dignity. And this one had a lock on it. If he pulled on the door and it didn't open, he knew someone was inside. Now, they go to the toilet, then they go to the mikvah. If they're disqualified, this is underground. If they're disqualified, there's been a big mystery. Now, they would be disqualified by during the night if one of the priests had a seminal omission. He is now what's called a Baal Kiri, a son of impurity or master of impurity. He cannot touch another Kohen because that person will also become impure. Also, if you sit where he sat, you become impure. If you are close enough that your shadow falls on them, they become automatically impure. Okay? It's kind of like the flu. So anyway, they are not allowed in the Azarah. Now, the problem with the building is the building, even though it opens to the Hell and the Azarah, the entire building has the Kedusha of the Azarah. So the question is, how could they come? It says that they went and sat with their brothers till the gates of the temple were open, and they exited through the tunnel that went below the Hell through the Tadi gate. Okay? So the question is, how could they come and sit back in the Beit HaMoked? One Kohen that's disqualified could wipe them out for a day. And so the answer was found. Captain Charles Wilson found this tunnel, been converted to a cistern. It had been walled up at this end. It originally extended all the way, they believe, to the end, and it had benches in it. Why would a tunnel have benches in it? Well, they would come by an underground passageway if they were disqualified, sit on the benches, wait till the Tadi gate was open, and they would exit going out this tunnel, turning, and going out the adjacent tunnel discovered by Captain Warren, and exit out the Tadi gate, we believe right here, based upon several things. But now we were able to confirm that the tunnel discovered by Captain Warren was the tunnel beneath the Kell in the north. Now, I'm going to blow you away, I think. I hope. I have all of this developed in my book. I hope I put this drawing in here. Oh, Captain Warren located the place of where the Beit HaTevilah was. They used instruments and with a stethoscope, and they tapped on the ground, and when they would get the echo, they would know a chamber was below. And so he marked, and I pointed to it. This is the overall map. I took this photograph of the map when I was in London at the PF. I went over there, the History Channel did a program on my research. And in my book, I have a close-up of it where you can actually read his words, which are going to be right here. That's the location. And here is where the Beit HaMoked was. And here is the tunnel with the benches, and here is where Warren's tunnel was, on the north side. But now we had a location for the Hell in the north, and we had a location for the Hell in the south. So let me see. We took a measurement. Actually, we weren't able to go up there and do the measurements. Comrade Schick had done them back in the 1870s. And so we took his measurements, and we measured between the two sites. And it split the Dome of the Rock right down the middle. And we had other evidences that the Dome of the Rock was the place of the Holy of Holies, but now we're able to confirm it. It confirmed that this was the Kell of the south, this was the Kell of the north, and everything. This right here, we had located the Beit Hadid Sots. Once we had the Beit Hadid Sots located, we had the various edges located. We were able to start filling in where the buildings were and everything. Okay, so here you see the tunnel system. Here's the Toddy. And let's see if I have, oh, this is Simka Jakovovich. This is the program on History Channel. But I wanted to show this. This is a building that we believe is the Zistos. You go inside and you can rub your fingers along the wall and put them up, and you'll still smell the ash from the burning. It's really remarkable. And they've opened up a new room. I went into the room about a year before they opened it up, but it's even more so than this one. Simka is about, I'm going to guess, between 6'2" and 6'5". He's quite a bit taller than me. And all of this above his head for about another 15 feet is wall that is still standing. Okay, so let's see. This is a painting. I'm going to just go for. This is the spring stone on the western side. And we have photographs of Arabs sitting on that, their feet on the ground. And everything below this, all of this. See the Herodian stone? The reason that they didn't knock it down is it was filled from the debris of what they knocked off from above it. And so this is one of the gates on the western side. Yes?
Right to the left of the corner, that room, right? A little more to your left.
Oh, all right. That groove is from a later period. There was some type of water piping that was put in by the Turks. Yeah, plumbing. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish up in just a moment. I'll show you this real quick. You see this gate here? That's the Toddy Gate. Excuse me, that's the Barclays Gate. It's named after the explorer that found it. He was a Methodist minister, and when you go to the Kotel, the Western Wall, it's going to be divided into a men's section and a women's section. And the women's section, if you go over to the extreme right-hand side, also the entrance into the Temple Mount is going to take you, this is going through a Muslim gate at the top called the Mahrabi Gate. It goes right over that gate. And the little stone, you can see it from the court of the women. It's a gigantic little stone. These gates right here are going to be 4 stories high. They're huge. Let's see. There are 4 gates on the western side. Josephus recorded them. All 4 gates have been found. You have the first led to the king's palace. It went to the passage over the intermediate valley, that's the Toropian Valley. 2 more led to the suburbs of the city. The last led to the other city where the road descended down into the valley by a great number of steps. And there, up again by the ascent from the city, lay opposite the temple in the manner of a theater. It was surrounded with a deep valley along the entire south quarter. So we have what's called Robinson's Arch, the southwestern corner. We have the Barclays Gate. Professor Netzer believes that he believed that the one at the southwest was used by only the upper class, that it went to the royal store. Then the Barclays Gate, we're going north along the wall. Then you have inside the Western Wall Tunnel, right at the very edge, you have what's called the Wilson's Arch. It's an upper gate, and half of the arch, half of the bridge was for pedestrians, and the other half was to bring water in. They have a massive conduit system bringing water from what are called the pools of Siloam, 12 miles away. Then your last gate is called the Ward's Gate, which is closest to the Holy of Holies. Yeah, yes. Yes, that's the Western Wall. Yes. This. You walk over it. You're going to come in up here on top.
It's sealed, but you can see the lintel.
Yeah, you can see this stone.
Or part of it
Uh-huh.
sticking out from the access to get up.
Right, and then further, this is the area we call the Cotel, the Western Wall. And then Wilson's Arch is going to be here, and further down will be Ward's. Here, this is across from the Robinson's Arch. This is going to be for this, right here. These are shops. See, right, and look at that pile of debris. Now, that pile of debris is much smaller than it used to be. They have cleared a lot of it away, but they left this for people to see the debris on the street. Now, you see right here? Right here is where you now come up from underneath, from the tunnels underneath. See the shops? You see the shop there? See the burn on the wall? It blistered it. This is the southeastern corner. This is one of Rittmeyer's drawings. And remember that gate I told you about that you can still see it's walled up? Here it is, right here. And there are windows that are still visible from the temple period. This, see the gate? Here's the spring stone. See the gate here? Now look at the difference between these stones and these stones. You see a difference? These look cleaner, right? These are Herodian, and this is Hasmonean. And so you're seeing where the two joined, where Herod added on. This is what we call the seam. Yes, right here. This is not. This is the edge of what we call a flush tower. You have two types of towers. One is called a flush tower, one is a projecting tower. Here you can see, here's the spring stone, here's a gate right here. Down over here we see Hasmonean stone. Here you can see, this is Hasmonean, this is Herodian, this is the seam. Here's the gate right here. See the seam? And all of this is documented in maps and everything. It takes a while. The temple, here's the great thing, is there is so much to learn, you're not going to learn it all. You're going to have a lot of mistakes you make, that's okay. But the great thing is that you're going to find when you read anywhere in the scripture, you're going to see things you weren't seeing before. You're going to understand. I do this major teaching on the birth of Yeshua. And using the temple information totally changes that story. Doesn't make it less. It corrects a lot of mistakes, but it becomes this story like you go, wow, because it gets better. It's like, you got the little condensed version in a review of what the whole thing's about, and then you go see the movie or the play, and you go, wow, had no idea. This stone, I just got a report. I have a student that comes to study with me from Alabama. He's a young guy. He's only 18, and he would drive 10 hours. He's 19. 19. He's 19. He started coming when he was 17, and he would drive 10 hours. He would come to study, and he was really excellent in Hebrew, and his university had a program that you could go to Israel and study, and he's in Haifa right now studying. And this stone, he just called me last week and said that they have cemented all but the top of it. Muslims do everything to hide the temple. This is a cornerstone, and it's actually mentioned in the book of Nehemiah. It is the northwestern corner of the Temple Mount. And sometimes I go there to pray. I've been there a few times to pray for people, and everything, but look at its shape. This is a Persian period stone. Doesn't mean it was put there by the Persian, but that the Jews were under the Persian Empire at that time. And so that stone is going to be located, here's the Golden Gate. That stone is going to be located right here in what's called the offset. That was the northeastern corner of the Temple Mount at that time. All right, we're down to our last two slides. And I put these in this morning. This is the layout of the temple building, and it's an accurate layout. I'm not sure if this was by Patrick or Netzer. This is by Patrick, and that drawing's actually done by Lee Brimbar. Here's his name. The stairway is wrong. Stairways won't operate with the ceremonies that they have to do on it. And so we had to modify that. But other than that, as far as we can tell right now, this is accurate. So you see a cutaway. You have this part here is known as the ulam. That's the porch. You see that would be it here. And you have, this is called the 12 malot, the 12 steps. The ulam, it has two chambers, one on each end. See them here? That's where they store the slaughter knives. And then you have what are called ta'im. See these right here? That's going to be this right here. It's 3 floors. There are 38 offices around the temple building. And so you go through, there's a doorway into the Hekal, or the HaKodesh, the holy room where the bread of the face is, and the altar of incense, and the menorah. There is also a stairway that goes up to the roof, a masiba. And so it's going up to the roof, and then they go around and come, they come out here, they go around and enter through this door, and there is a ladder. Now, that ladder, you have to understand that this ladder had to be some tremendous wood. It's made of wood, but from here to up here is 8 stories. Okay? I wouldn't want to climb it. I wouldn't want to climb it at all. From here to here is 8 stories. The total building is going to be, this is 40 cubits, that's 40 cubits. And the thickness of the walls in between, it all comes out to a total with the foundation of 6 cubits to 100 cubits. Okay, so yeah, they come up on top, and this is, in my opinion, I cannot verify this, but I believe where in the morning there has to be a kohen. They start the services about an hour before to 2 hours before the sun rises. They have to get the altar prepared. They have to fill the kior with water. They have a lot that they have to do. They have to select the priests for the various jobs. The temple courtyard is filled before the sun rises with all types of worshipers. So anyway, there is that at some point the temple official is going to send a priest to see if the sun has risen and if the light from the sun has reached to Hebron. Now, if it does, he calls Borkai. And that means, Borkai means breaking forth, or light breaking forth. And that is the signal that they begin the services. Okay, so I'm not going to go into, there's really deep reasons for this. But what I want to come to is the roof up here is slanted. Ever so, just a slight slant from one end of the roof to the other. Any idea why? What? Rain, and snow. Okay, Jerusalem's on a mountaintop. And we have buildings that you get too much weight on them, they're liable to fall. So there is a drain in this corner right here. Now that drain, I'm going to show it to you. This is it right here. And that drain is coming from this corner. It's coming down to the wall to right here. It's going to end up right about in with the ta on this side, or the office on this side. You see that? There's a door right there. Right there. Now, That's called the Beit Hordat Hamayim. Now this drain is not little. It's 3 cubits wide. Okay, so I'm not good at this, but we're going to go about 23.04 inches, and then again, and again. That drain's going to be about like that. Okay, it's a good, huge, but it's a big building, gigantic building. Okay, now the drain. All right, the drain is going to come over, and this is today a cistern, but originally it was a tunnel. I had a young lady. She was an Orthodox young lady that we met years and years and years ago, and she was a student in college, and she was about to start her master's degree, and she was going to specialize in the water of ancient Jerusalem. Her name was Ronit Amiel. So she needed some equipment in order to develop her thesis, and we helped her get her equipment. We raised some money for her to get her equipment. And so when we would go over, we would always get Ronit to take us through the Gihon Springs and show us all that was there. Now, she got her master's, and she rose to become the leading expert on the ancient water systems of Jerusalem. And there's actually an article in one of these volumes with her and 2 others that is basically on that topic, is explaining the water systems and how they work. So Ronit worked with me as a favor because we helped her. She sent me her reports, and I called her up and I said, okay, we're trying to figure out the water of the temple. And so she worked with me on it. Now I want to show you something real quick, that this is a tunnel that was used for operating the water system. There is below this, and it has not been located because we're not able to go down in there. But there is a cistern, and what we're told in the Tractate Midot is that it was a fixed cistern, and that it supplied water to the entire Azara. Okay, now, what is a fixed cistern? I mean, it's not a temporary system. You can't move a cistern from one place to another. And what we arrived at is a fixed cistern means a cistern that is not dependent on water from an aqueduct nor from rain, that it is fed by a spring. And so it has a reliable water supply all year. And so anyway, there is a pumping station in this end of that tunnel. And we have the ancient remains of the pumping station. And now, you see this right here. See that little line right there? From way back in the 1800s, the Palestine Exploration Fund explorers said that if you could find the conduit that went from the Beit Hordat Hamayim, okay, that's the water channel for the roof of the building, that it would empty into this tunnel system. And there is a trough system. I mean, it's very elaborate. It's very fascinating. Here's the deal. Last year we found it. And I had a meeting with Rabbi Richmond to present this in brief. We'll have another meeting where we set it up. I have to do my research. I have to get everything put together and everything. But with finding that, then we can be within a quarter of an inch, 1/10 of an inch, or whatever. We have the exact measurements of the building, and we have where everything's laid out. And this is, I want to end with this. I want to show you that God's supplying everything, okay? God's supplying everything. People are always asking me, oh, well, if the temple building's up there, is there enough room to leave the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Let me tell you, God's not going to share his mount with Islam. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I don't care. God's going to take care of it. Everything's going to come about. He's going to give the right information. He's going to bring it all out. It's all going to be to His glory. But it's going to happen in His timing. And here's what we need to know. We're commanded in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 43, to learn every entrance, every exit, every building, every ceremony of the temple. It says measure the pattern. But I mean, it specifically says to learn it. Okay, and then we see the same thing in the book of Revelation. It says measure the pattern in Revelation in chapter 11. So I hope that you will. I know Dennis is committed to learning about the temple, teaching about the temple. I know that Albuquerque's become this center for where temple activities are happening. And if we can help you anyway, I'd love to help you. I'd love to come back and teach more, help you with materials, questions, anything we can do. And Debbie and I want to tell you that we are so impressed with this congregation and the work that you're doing, and we support you with our hearts and our prayers. Thank you. Because